Ladies and gentlemen, let me start with a truth that might make you uncomfortable, but it just might save you years of heartache. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come with lipstick on a collar or a phone turned face down. Sometimes it comes dressed up as words, simple words, casual words, words said with confidence, a smile, even love in the voice. And if you don't know how to hear them, you'll miss the warning right in front of you. The title today is, If a Man Says These 6 Words, He's Cheating. Not because every man who says them is evil, not because love isn't complicated, but because patterns don't lie and excuses always sound the same. Now listen closely. The 6 words are, you're overthinking it. It's nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about intuition, because too many people have been taught to distrust the very thing designed to protect them. Intuition is not insecurity. It is not weakness. It is not fear. Intuition is intelligence that doesn't need permission to speak. It is your inner wisdom processing patterns faster than logic ever could. And the reason it feels uncomfortable is because it often reveals truths you're not emotionally ready to face, but spiritually ready to hear. When something in your spirit feels off, that feeling didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't wake up one morning and decide to sabotage your happiness. It came from observing changes in tone, energy, effort, presence, and consistency. Your intuition noticed the pause before he answered. It noticed the shift in how often he calls. It noticed how warmth turned into distance and openness turned into defensiveness. Your mind may not yet have the evidence, but your intuition already connected the dots. The problem is, the moment you express that feeling, you're often told you're overthinking, being dramatic, or reading too much into it, and slowly you begin to question yourself instead of questioning the behavior. This is where intuition gets mislabeled as insecurity, but insecurity is fear without reason. Intuition is awareness with experience behind it. Insecurity imagines problems. Intuition recognizes patterns. Think about this. Have you ever had a gut feeling about someone and later discovered you were right all along? That's because intuition stores memory. It remembers how things felt before they changed. It remembers what consistency looked like. It remembers what safety sounded like. And when something no longer matches that memory, intuition speaks up, not to accuse, but to alert. A man who is honest will never fear your intuition. He will lean into conversation, not away from it. He will reassure with transparency, not irritation. But when a man becomes defensive over calm questions, when he minimizes your feelings instead of addressing them, that's not love protecting the relationship. That's avoidance protecting a secret. And intuition recognizes that immediately. Here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Intuition becomes louder when it's been ignored too many times. At first it whispers, then it nudges, then it unsettles, and if you keep dismissing it, it eventually screams through anxiety, sleepless nights, and emotional exhaustion, not because it wants to hurt you, but because it's trying to save you. You see, insecurity asks, am I enough? Intuition asks, why doesn't this feel right anymore? Those are very different questions. Insecurity is rooted in self-doubt. Intuition is rooted in self-respect. When you confuse the two, you end up apologizing for your awareness. You start shrinking your questions. You start censoring your feelings. You start believing that peace means silence. But peace built on silence is temporary and it always collapses. Many people stay in situations longer than they should because they're waiting for proof. But intuition doesn't work on proof. When words and actions stop aligning, intuition notices. When affection becomes inconsistent, intuition notices. When explanations stop making sense, intuition notices. And when someone starts making you feel guilty for noticing, that's when intuition is no longer just a feeling, it's a warning. Let me be clear, intuition does not demand confrontation. It demands awareness. It doesn't say fight. It says pay attention. It asks you to observe behavior without emotional attachment to the outcome. It asks you to slow down instead of explain yourself. It asks you to watch how someone responds when you stop over-giving, over-explaining, and over-accommodating. And here's where people get it wrong. They think trusting intuition means jumping to conclusions. It doesn't. It means trusting yourself enough to pause. It means giving behavior time to reveal its truth. It means recognizing that consistency is louder than promises, and patterns are louder than apologies. A person who is faithful will not feel threatened by your awareness. They will not need to convince you that nothing is wrong. Their behavior will already be saying it. But a person who is hiding something will always try to make you doubt your perception, because if you trust yourself, they lose control of the narrative. That's why intuition is dangerous to deception. It doesn't argue. It doesn't beg. It doesn't need explanations. It simply observes and withdraws when something doesn't align. And that withdrawal is often what exposes the truth faster than confrontation ever could. You don't need to become colder. You don't need to become suspicious. You simply need to stop gaslighting yourself. Stop explaining away discomfort. Stop calling your awareness anxiety. Stop assuming that wanting clarity means you're difficult. Wanting honesty is not a flaw. Needing emotional safety is not weakness. Listening to your intuition is self-leadership. And let's be honest, many people ignore intuition because they're afraid of what it might cost them. They're afraid that trusting it might mean losing the relationship, starting over, or facing a painful truth. But what intuition is really asking is this: what will it cost you if you don't listen? How much of yourself are you willing to abandon to keep someone comfortable? Because every time you silence your intuition, you teach yourself that your feelings are unreliable. You train yourself to tolerate confusion. You normalize emotional instability. And over time, that does more damage than the truth ever could. Intuition doesn't always tell you someone is cheating. Sometimes it tells you someone is emotionally unavailable. Sometimes it tells you someone is no longer invested. Sometimes it tells you you're being taken for granted. And sometimes it tells you you've outgrown the situation. But whatever it's telling you, it deserves respect, not ridicule. A healthy relationship does not require you to ignore your inner voice. It strengthens it. It makes you feel safe asking questions. It makes clarity feel natural, not confrontational. And if being aware threatens the connection, then the connection was built on imbalance, not love. So the next time you feel that quiet unease, don't rush to explain it away. Don't label it insecurity just because someone else is uncomfortable with it. Sit with it. Observe. Notice patterns. Trust yourself enough to pause instead of panic, because intuition is not trying to ruin your happiness. It's trying to protect your dignity, your peace, and your future. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about deflection, because it is one of the most misunderstood and most dangerous behaviors in relationships. Deflection doesn't look like anger all the time. It doesn't always show up as yelling or storming out. Most of the time, it shows up calm, confident, even reasonable. It shows up as a sentence that sounds harmless but carries the power to erase your reality. When a man deflects, he is not answering your question. He is redirecting your attention away from the truth. Deflection is not reassurance. Reassurance brings clarity. Reassurance brings peace. Reassurance makes you feel safe for asking. Deflection makes you feel embarrassed for noticing. It turns a simple question into an accusation and your curiosity into a character flaw. And that's why it works so well. Because instead of discussing the issue, you end up defending yourself. When someone is innocent, they don't need to confuse you. They don't need to minimize. They don't need to invalidate your feelings. They explain, they clarify, they repeat themselves if necessary, because they understand that trust grows through transparency. But when someone is hiding something, they protect the secret by attacking the question. They shift the focus from their behavior to your reaction. Suddenly, the conversation isn't about what they did. It's about how you feel, how you think, and how you're making a big deal out of nothing. Deflection often sounds like logic, but it's not rooted in truth. It's rooted in avoidance. It's the art of answering without answering. You ask why he's been distant, and he responds by saying you're too sensitive. You ask why he's guarding his phone, and he says you don't trust him. You ask why plans keep changing, and he accuses you of being controlling. Each time, the original question disappears, and you're left questioning yourself instead. This is where emotional power shifts. When deflection enters a relationship, honesty leaves the room. Because now, every concern you raise feels risky. You start rehearsing your words before speaking. You soften your tone, add disclaimers, apologize before you even finish your sentence. Not because you're wrong, but because you've been trained to expect backlash. And over time, that training silences you. A faithful man does not punish curiosity. He understands that questions are not attacks, they are invitations to deeper understanding. But a man who is deflecting sees questions as threats to his freedom, his image, or his hidden behavior. So instead of meeting you with openness, he meets you with resistance disguised as reason. Deflection is especially powerful because it slowly erodes your confidence. It doesn't happen all at once. First, you doubt one feeling, then another, then eventually you stop trusting yourself altogether. You begin to believe that your emotions are the problem, that your expectations are unrealistic, that your desire for clarity is asking for too much. And once you accept that lie, the door opens for continued disrespect. Another sign of deflection is inconsistency. His explanations don't quite line up, but when you notice, he tells you you're nitpicking. He changes the story slightly, and when you ask for clarification, he says you're trying to start an argument. This creates confusion, and confusion creates dependence. Because when you don't trust your perception, you rely on theirs. Deflection also thrives on urgency. He may rush the conversation, shut it down, or accuse you of ruining the mood. Anything to avoid staying on the topic long enough for the truth to surface. And if you persist, you're labeled difficult, dramatic, insecure. These labels are not accidental. They are tools designed to discourage future questions. What makes deflection so dangerous is that it feels like communication, but it's actually control. It controls what can be discussed, how it can be discussed, and when it must end. And once someone controls the narrative, they control the relationship. Now, here's the part many people miss. Deflection is a choice. It's not confusion. It's not misunderstanding. It's a deliberate move away from accountability, because accountability requires courage. It requires humility. It requires being willing to face discomfort. Deflection avoids all of that by making you the problem instead, and the more you accept deflection, the more it escalates. What starts as dismissive comments turns into emotional distance. What starts as avoiding questions turns into avoiding responsibility. And eventually, you find yourself in a relationship where your feelings exist only if they are convenient for the other person. But here's the truth. You are not wrong for wanting answers. You are not difficult for noticing patterns. You are not insecure for expecting consistency. Those are not flaws, they are standards. And anyone who tries to convince you otherwise is benefiting from your silence. A man who truly values you will not need to deflect. He will address issues directly, even when it's uncomfortable. He will understand that trust isn't maintained by avoiding conversations, but by having them with honesty and respect. He will not make you feel small for asking big questions. So when you encounter deflection, don't argue with it. Arguing gives it energy. Instead, observe it. Notice how often your questions are turned back on you. Notice how clarity is replaced with criticism. Notice how your peace disappears after conversations that should have brought reassurance. Because deflection is not a communication style, it's a warning sign. And the moment you recognize it for what it is, you regain your power. You stop chasing explanations. You stop over-explaining your feelings. You stop trying to prove your worth through patience. You realize that reassurance doesn't confuse, it comforts. Honesty doesn't attack, it aligns. And love doesn't make you feel guilty for wanting the truth. The moment you stop accepting deflection as reassurance is the moment you stop betraying yourself. And that's where real strength begins. Self-respect is quiet, and that's why so many people misunderstand it. They think power looks like confrontation, like demanding answers, like pressing until someone finally admits the truth. But real power doesn't chase. Real power observes. Real power knows that you don't have to force clarity. Clarity always reveals itself when you stop interfering with the process. When you are grounded in self-respect, you don't panic when something feels off. You don't rush to fill the silence with explanations or apologies. You don't over-text, over-call, or overextend yourself trying to pull someone back into alignment. Instead, you create space, and in that space, truth rises. Because people can pretend when they're being pressured, but they expose themselves when they're free. Chasing is often mistaken for caring. In reality, chasing is fear disguised as effort. It's the fear of losing someone, the fear of being alone, the fear that if you don't push hard enough, you'll be abandoned. But when you chase, you give away leverage. You communicate that your peace is negotiable, that your boundaries can be bent, and that you're willing to do emotional labor alone. And once that message is sent, it's very difficult to take it back. Observation, on the other hand, keeps your dignity intact. It allows you to see how someone behaves when you stop compensating for their lack of effort. When you stop initiating every conversation, do they reach out? When you stop making excuses for them, do their actions still make sense? When you stop asking for reassurance, do they offer it naturally? These answers cannot be argued with because they are shown, not spoken. A person who is genuine will step forward when you step back. They will feel the space and choose to close it with consistency and care. But a person who is dishonest or emotionally unavailable will take advantage of that space. They will disappear, grow colder, or become irritated that you are no longer doing the work for them. And that reaction tells you everything you need to know without a single confrontation. Many people chase because they believe silence means losing. But silence, when used with self-respect, is not punishment. It is information. It reveals priorities. It exposes effort levels. It shows whether someone values your presence or merely enjoys your availability. And the beauty of observation is that it removes confusion. You are no longer guessing, you are watching. Self-respect also means knowing that explanations are not always owed. You don't have to announce that you're pulling back. You don't have to justify why you're protecting your energy. You don't have to convince someone that your feelings are valid. The moment you feel the need to explain your worth, you've already stepped out of your power. When you observe instead of chase, you stop reacting emotionally and start responding intentionally. You are no longer trying to control the outcome. You are allowing behavior to speak, and behavior never lies. Words can be rehearsed, promises can be broken, apologies can be empty, but patterns are honest. This is especially important because chasing keeps you emotionally invested in potential instead of reality. You fall in love with who someone could be if they changed, if they tried harder, if they finally understood. Observation brings you back to who they are right now. It grounds you in the present instead of trapping you in hope. And hope without evidence is one of the most exhausting places to live. A person who respects you will not require you to chase clarity. They will offer it freely. They will not let you sit in confusion. They will not punish you with silence or inconsistency. They understand that emotional safety is part of love. But when someone only gives you attention after you chase it, that attention is not love, it's control. Pulling back does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop forcing. It means you stop negotiating with mixed signals. It means you stop sacrificing self-respect for temporary reassurance. And here's the truth most people don't want to admit. If pulling back causes someone to leave, they were already halfway gone. You didn't lose them, you revealed them. Observation also protects you from self-betrayal. When you chase, you ignore your own needs. You rationalize behavior that hurts you. You accept crumbs and call it patience. But when you observe, you stay aligned with yourself. You notice how you feel after interactions. You notice whether peace or anxiety follows. You notice whether your presence is valued or merely tolerated. This kind of self-respect doesn't make noise. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't manipulate. It simply chooses differently. It chooses distance over desperation. It chooses clarity over chaos. It chooses dignity over drama, and that choice alone shifts the entire dynamic. People often reveal their true intentions when they sense they are no longer being chased. Some will step up because they feel the loss of your energy. Others will fade because the benefit is gone. Either outcome is a win because both give you the truth. You don't need to prove your worth to someone who already sees it, and you don't need to chase someone who benefits from you doubting yours. The moment you stop chasing, you send a powerful message not to them, but to yourself, that your peace matters, your time matters, and your emotional well-being is not up for negotiation. And when you reach that place, you stop asking why someone changed, why they pulled away, or why things don't feel the same. You already know. Their behavior answered the question the moment you stopped chasing and started watching. So if a man looks you in the eye and says, "You're overthinking it, it's nothing," while your spirit feels unsettled, don't argue, don't plead, don't chase, pause, pull back, pay attention, because the right man won't make you feel crazy for wanting honesty, and the wrong man will always try to convince you that your intuition is the enemy. Ladies and gentlemen, trust what you feel, not just what you're told. Your peace is too expensive to trade for excuses.